Clara's hands shook so hard she nearly dropped the youngest child. 3-year-old Nell whimpered against her chest, while the other 3 girls pressed against her frozen skirts, their small bodies trembling from cold and hunger. The stagecoach door had barely opened before the rancher's face went hard as stone. "You lied to me," Jackson Cole said, his voice cutting through the December wind. She had. God help her, she had lied. But what choice did a woman have when 4 starving children depended on her next breath? Before we continue this journey through the snow-swept Wyoming frontier, I invite you to stay with us until the very end. If this story moves you, please subscribe to our channel and comment with your city so I can see just how far Clara and Jackson's story travels. Now let's step back to where it all began. The advertisement had been specific. Housekeeper wanted. Single woman, room and board provided, reasonable wages, apply in writing. Clara Weston had read those words 17 times before she found the courage to lie. She'd written back in her best hand, the one Mrs. Holloway had taught her years ago when Clara was still young enough to believe education might save her. Single woman, she'd claimed. Experienced in household management. Available immediately. She hadn't mentioned Ruth, or Grace, or Lily, or little Nell, who still cried for a mother who'd been dead 6 months now. The stagecoach from Cheyenne had taken 3 days. 3 days of 4 hungry children, packed into a space meant for luggage, hidden beneath a tarp Clara had bribed the driver to provide. 3 days of Nell's feverish whimpering, of Ruth's silent accusations, of Grace trying to keep everyone calm, while Lily clutched that worn cloth doll like it might disappear if she loosened her grip. And now they were here. Cole Ranch, Wyoming Territory, December 1878. The snow had started falling an hour ago, thick and relentless. Clara could barely see the main house through the white curtain, but she could see the man standing on the porch clearly enough. Tall, broad-shouldered, arms crossed, face carved from the same granite as the mountains behind him. Jackson Cole. The rancher who'd advertised for a single woman and gotten something else entirely. "Ma'am." His voice carried across the yard, flat and cold. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding." Clara stepped down from the coach, her boots sinking into fresh snow. She kept Nell pressed against her chest, feeling the child's too warm forehead against her neck. Behind her, Ruth climbed down first, then helped Grace, then Lily. They moved with the practiced coordination of children who'd learned to be silent and efficient. "Mr. Cole." Clara forced her voice steady. "I can explain." "Can you?" He hadn't moved from the porch. Hadn't uncrossed his arms. "Because your letter said single. That right there looks like 4 reasons you ain't." Ruth stepped forward, putting herself between the rancher and her younger sisters. 8 years old and already standing like a soldier. "They're not reasons. They're children." "Ruth," Clara's voice carried warning. "They are, though." Ruth didn't back down. "We're children. And we're cold. And Nell's sick. You gonna make us stand here in the snow while you decide if we're worth letting inside?" Jackson Cole's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his gray eyes. Surprise maybe at being challenged by someone barely 4 feet tall. The stagecoach driver, an old man named Whitaker, who'd taken pity on them in Cheyenne, cleared his throat. "Storm's coming in fast, Mr. Cole. Whatever you decide about keeping 'em might want to decide it inside. That little one don't look good." He meant Nell. Clara tightened her grip on the child, feeling the heat radiating through her thin coat. The fever had started 2 days ago. Clara had been praying it would break, but prayers hadn't done much for her lately. Jackson Cole finally moved. He came down the porch steps with the deliberate stride of a man who owned every inch of ground beneath his boots. He stopped 3 feet from Clara, close enough that she could see the scar on his left cheek, the gray threading through his dark hair. "How old?" he asked. "I'm 26. "Not you, the sick one." 3. "She'll be 4 in spring." "If she makes it to spring," Clara didn't say. Jackson's jaw tightened. He looked at Nell's flushed face, at her closed eyes, at the way she'd gone limp in Clara's arms. Then he looked at the other three girls, Ruth with her defiant glare, Grace with her careful stillness, Lily with her cloth doll, and her silence. "Inside," he said finally. "All of you. Now." He turned and walked toward the house without waiting to see if they followed. Ruth hesitated, looking up at Clara with eyes that had seen too much for 8 years. "Is he gonna let us stay?" "I don't know, sweetheart." "If he doesn't?" Clara had no answer. There was nowhere else to go. They'd used the last of their money for stagecoach fare, the last of their food 3 days ago, the last of their options the moment Clara had decided to lie on that application. "Move," she said quietly, "before the storm gets worse." They moved. The ranch house was larger than Clara had expected. A main room with a stone fireplace that currently held a dying fire. A kitchen with cast iron pots hanging from hooks. A heavy wooden table with 6 chairs. 2 doors led to what she assumed were bedrooms. A third door stood closed at the end of a short hallway. Jackson gestured toward the fireplace. "Get them warm. I'll fetch more wood." Then he was gone, the front door banging shut behind him. Ruth immediately started helping Grace and Lily out of their wet coats. "Sit by the fire. Grace, hold Lily's hands. They're turning blue." "Ruth, I can manage," Clara began. "You're holding Nell. I've got the others." Ruth's voice was flat practical. "I've been doing this for months. I know what to do." It was true. Since their mother died, since their father followed 3 days later, Ruth had become something more than a sister. She'd become the one who noticed when Lily stopped eating, when Grace started crying in her sleep, when Nell's cough turned into something worse. Clara had been their father's daughter from before, his bastard child from an affair he'd tried to forget. She'd come to work for the Holloway family as a companion to Mrs. Holloway, never expecting to become the only thing standing between 4 orphaned girls and the workhouse. But here she was. Nell stirred in her arms a weak, thready sound that might have been "Mama," or might have been nothing at all. "Shh, baby. I've got you. I've got you." The door opened again, bringing a gust of wind and snow, and Jackson Cole carrying an armload of split wood. He kicked the door shut behind him and crossed to the fireplace, kneeling to build up the fire with quick, efficient movements. Clara watched him work. Watched the way his hands moved, confident and sure. Watched the way the firelight caught the sharp angles of his face. "There's a bedroom through that door," he said without turning around. "Was my mother's. Bed's made. Get the sick child settled." "Mr. Cole." "Do it now. Questions later." Clara hesitated, then nodded to Ruth. "Take the girls. Get Nell into bed. I'll be there in a moment." Ruth gathered her sisters with the efficiency of a general marshalling troops. Grace took Lily's hand. Lily took her doll. They disappeared through the door Jackson had indicated, leaving Clara alone with the rancher. He stood from the fireplace, brushing bark and ash from his hands. In the growing warmth, steam rose from his damp coat. He didn't remove it. "Talk," he said. Clara drew a breath. She'd rehearsed this speech a dozen times during the stagecoach journey. It had sounded better in her head. "The children are my half-sisters. Same father, different mothers. Their parents died of fever 6 months ago. There's no other family willing to take them. I've been caring for them since, but—" Her voice cracked. She forced it steady. "But I have no legal claim, no money, no resources. I've applied for every position that might allow me to keep them together, and I've been rejected every time the moment people learn about the children." "So you lied?" "Yes." "To me?" "Yes." Jackson's expression didn't change. "And you figured what you'd show up with 4 girls in tow, and I'd just accept it. Out of the goodness of my heart. I figured if I could prove myself capable first, if you could see that I can manage the work, that the children won't be a burden, maybe you'd reconsider." "That's a hell of an assumption, ma'am." "It was the only option I had left." Clara met his eyes directly. She was done apologizing, done begging. I've exhausted every charity home, every aid society, every possible placement. No one wants 4 girls with no inheritance and no connections. The only alternatives are workhouses that would separate them, or—" She stopped, unable to say the rest. Or what? Or selling them. The words came out bitter and broken. "There are men who buy children, Mr. Cole. For labor. For other things. I won't let that happen. I won't let them be separated. I promised their mother on her deathbed that I'd keep them together, and I intend to keep that promise, even if it means lying to every rancher in Wyoming territory." The silence stretched between them, broken only by the crackle of the fire and the howl of wind against the windows. From the bedroom came Ruth's voice, low and soothing, saying something Clara couldn't make out. Then Lily's softer response. Then nothing. Jackson Cole stared at Clara for a long moment. His expression remained unreadable, but something in his posture had shifted. The rigid anger had softened into something else. Not quite acceptance, not quite sympathy, something in between. "Their names," he said finally. Clara blinked. "What?" "The girls. They have names, I assume." Oh, she hadn't expected this question. Ruth is the oldest. She's 8. Then Grace, she's 6. Lily is 5. And Nell is 3. Ruth, Grace, Lily, Nell. He repeated the names like he was filing them away. "And you're their half-sister?" "Yes." "Same father?" "Yes." "He acknowledged you legally, I mean?" "No." The old shame rose in Clara's throat. "I was his bastard. He kept me hidden, gave me employment in his household after his wife fell ill, but never claimed me as family." "But you're claiming his children." "Their mother asked me to, before she died." Clara's voice cracked again, and this time she couldn't force it steady. "She said I was family whether their father admitted it or not. She made me promise I wouldn't let them be separated, wouldn't let them end up like you did." Clara said nothing. What was there to say? She'd grown up in charity homes and servant quarters, always unwanted, always reminded of her shameful origins. She would die before she let Ruth and Grace and Lily and Nell suffer the same fate. Jackson moved to the window, staring out at the snow that had turned the world white and featureless. His back was to her, broad and unyielding. "I've run this ranch alone for 3 years," he said quietly. "Before that, my mother was here. Before that, my whole family. 4 brothers, a sister, parents who'd built this place from nothing." He paused. Clara waited. "They're all gone now, dead or scattered. I came back from the war thinking I wanted quiet, thinking I wanted to be left alone, thought I'd found what I was looking for." He turned back to face her. "Then you show up with 4 children and expect me to what? Become something I haven't been in 10 years. "I expect you to let us work for our keep," Clara said. "I'm a good housekeeper. I can cook, clean, manage a household better than most. The older girls can help with simple chores, collecting eggs, feeding chickens. They won't interfere with your ranch operation or demand more than their share." "And the sick one, the 3-year-old with fever." Clara's throat tightened. "She needs warmth and rest. Maybe a doctor if the fever doesn't break. I know it's asking more than I have any right to ask, but I don't know what else to do." "You could have been honest from the start. And you would have rejected my application without a second thought, like everyone else did." Something that might have been a smile flickered across Jackson's face. It was gone before Clara could be certain. "You're probably right about that," he admitted. "Single woman's hard enough to find willing to come out this far. Woman with 4 children." He shook his head. "Wouldn't have even responded to the letter." "Then you understand why I lied." "I understand. Don't mean I like it." He crossed to the kitchen, pulling down a tin from one of the shelves. "There's willow bark tea in here. Good for fever. Boil water and steep it strong. It's bitter, but it works." Clara stared at him. "Does this mean—" "It means I'm not sending a sick child out into a blizzard. Beyond that, I haven't decided anything." He set the tin on the table with more force than necessary. "You've got one night. Tomorrow when the storm breaks, we'll talk terms. If your terms don't match mine, you'll be on the next stage back to wherever you came from. And if they do match," Jackson's jaw tightened, "then maybe we can work something out. But you should know right now I'm not looking for a family, not looking to replace what I lost. If you stay as employees. The children stay out of my way. You don't expect more from me than wages and a roof. Understood?" "Understood." "Good." He moved toward the door, grabbing his coat from the hook. "There's food in the larder. Help yourself. Get those children fed and put that tea on for the little one. I'll be in the barn if there's trouble." "Mr. Cole." He stopped, hand on the door frame. "Thank you," Clara said quietly. "I know I don't deserve your kindness, but thank you." "It ain't kindness, ma'am. It's practical. Storm's too bad to send you anywhere tonight. That's all this is." Then he was gone, the door slamming shut behind him, leaving Clara alone with the fire and the howling wind and the faint sound of children's voices from the bedroom. Ruth emerged from the bedroom, 20 minutes later, her face pale with worry. "Nell's fever is worse. She's burning up." Clara had the water boiling and the willow bark steeping. She poured a cup of the bitter tea, adding a spoonful of honey she'd found in the larder. "Help me get this into her." Together they coaxed Nell to drink. The child was barely conscious, her small body radiating heat, her breath coming in shallow gasps. Grace sat on the bed beside her, holding her hand. Lily had retreated to a corner with her doll, rocking back and forth with the silent self-soothing of a child who'd learned not to ask for comfort. "Is she going to die?" Grace asked, her voice small and trembling. "No." Clara's answer came out fiercer than she'd intended. "She's not going to die. We didn't come all this way for her to die. Mama died." Lily's voice floated from the corner, barely audible. "And Papa. Everyone dies." "Not Nell." Ruth's jaw was set with the same stubborn determination Clara had seen in the ranch yard. "We won't let her." Clara looked at these children, her sisters, though they'd only known the truth of their connection for 6 months. Ruth, who'd taken on the weight of mothering at 8 years old. Grace, who tried so hard to keep everyone happy. Lily, who'd retreated into silence after their parents' death. And Nell, the baby, too young to understand why everything had changed. They had no one else. Clara was all that stood between them and a world that didn't want them. "Listen to me," she said, gathering them close, even Lily, who stiffened at first before melting into the embrace. "We are going to survive this. All of us. Together. That man out there, he's rough, and he's angry that I lied to him. But he let us stay tonight. That's a start. Tomorrow I'm going to convince him to let us stay longer. And I will do whatever it takes to make that happen. Do you understand?" Ruth nodded slowly. "What do we have to do?" "Be helpful. Be quiet. Don't cause trouble. Show him that we're worth keeping." "Like proving ourselves," Grace said. "Like when Papa used to make us prove we deserved dessert." Clara's heart twisted. "Something like that. Yes." "I don't like him," Lily whispered. "He has cold eyes." "He's been alone a long time." Clara smoothed Lily's hair back from her face. "Sometimes people who are alone forget how to be warm. That doesn't mean they can't remember." "Do you think he will remember?" Clara looked at the closed door, thinking of Jackson Cole standing on his porch with his arms crossed, thinking of the way his voice had softened slightly when he'd asked Nell's age, thinking of the willow bark tea he'd pointed her toward without being asked. "I think," she said carefully, "that he already wants to. He just doesn't know it yet." The storm raged through the night. Clara stayed by Nell's bedside, dosing her with willow bark tea every hour, wiping her forehead with cool cloths, praying to a God she wasn't sure she believed in anymore. Ruth fell asleep, sitting up, her head nodding against the wall. Grace curled around Nell on the bed, her small body providing warmth. Lily slept on the floor with her doll too exhausted to care about comfort. Sometime after midnight, the bedroom door opened. Jackson Cole stood in the doorway, a lantern in one hand, snow still dusting his coat. He said nothing, just looked at the tableau before him, the sick child, the sleeping sisters, the woman who'd lied her way into his home. "Fever's still high," Clara said quietly. "But it hasn't gotten worse. I think the tea is helping." He nodded once. Then he crossed to the fireplace in the main room, added more wood, and returned to stand in the doorway again. "There's a doctor in town," he said finally. "If she's not better by morning, I'll ride for him." Clara's eyes filled with tears she couldn't afford to shed. "You don't have to." "I know I don't." His voice was gruff. "Get some sleep, Miss Weston. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." He pulled the door closed behind him, and Clara heard his boots crossing the main room, then the creak of another door opening and shutting. She looked down at Nell's flushed face, at Grace's arm thrown protectively over her sister, at Ruth's exhausted determination, even in sleep, at Lily's fierce grip on her only remaining possession from the life they'd lost. They'd made it this far. One night at a time. One lie at a time. One desperate gamble after another. Now everything depended on a rancher with cold eyes and a house too quiet for the family it had once held. Clara closed her own eyes and let the exhaustion finally take her, praying that when morning came, she'd find the words to make him let them stay. Dawn arrived gray and muffled the storm, having blown itself out sometime before first light. Clara woke to silence, the dangerous kind that comes after heavy snowfall when the world holds its breath. Nell's forehead was cooler. Clara pressed her hand against the child's face again, hardly daring to believe it. But yes, the fever had broken. Nell's skin was damp with sweat but no longer burning. Her breathing had eased into the deep, steady rhythm of healing sleep. "Thank God," Clara whispered. "Thank God." Ruth stirred beside her. "Is she—" "The fever broke. She's going to be all right." Ruth's careful composure cracked just for a moment, and Clara saw the terrified 8-year-old beneath the soldier's mask. Then it was back, and Ruth was nodding with practical satisfaction. "Good. That's good. What about the man? What about him? Are we staying?" Clara looked toward the bedroom door, beyond which lay a kitchen, a rancher, and an uncertain future. "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out." She rose carefully, trying not to wake Grace or Lily, and slipped through the door into the main room. Jackson Cole was already there. He sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, staring at nothing. When he heard her approach, he looked up. "The little one?" "Fever broke this morning. She's sleeping now." Something that might have been relief flickered across his features. "Good. That's good." Clara stopped a few feet from the table. She was acutely aware of her rumpled dress, her tangled hair, the dark circles under her eyes from a night without real sleep. Not exactly the image of a competent housekeeper, but she'd learned long ago that appearance mattered less than determination. "Mr. Cole, about what happens now." "Sit down," he interrupted, gesturing to the chair across from him. "You want coffee?" Yes, thank you." He rose and poured her a cup without asking how she took it. Black, apparently. She didn't complain. "I've been thinking," he said, settling back into his chair. "All night, pretty much. About you. About those girls. About what you said yesterday." Clara wrapped her hands around the warm cup, waiting. "I meant what I said. I'm not looking for a family. Not looking to replace what I lost. This ranch has been quiet for a long time, and I've gotten used to it that way." Her heart sank. "But—" He held up a hand before she could speak. "I've also been thinking about something else. Something I maybe forgot while I was busy getting used to the quiet." "What's that?" Jackson's gray eyes met hers directly. "This house wasn't built for one man alone. My parents raised 6 children in these rooms, filled them with noise and fighting and all the chaos that comes with people loving each other. He paused, seeming to struggle with the next words. It's been dead quiet for 3 years. I told myself that was what I wanted. But last night, listening to you moving around in there, listening to those children breathing... He shook his head. House sounded different. Not worse. Just different. Clara didn't dare breathe. Here's what I'm offering, Jackson continued. 1 month. You stay for 1 month and prove you can handle the work. The children stay out of the ranch operation, but they can help with household chores if they're able. I'll pay fair wages, provide room and board, and if it works out, if we can make this arrangement function, we'll talk about making it permanent. And if it doesn't work out, then I'll pay your fare to wherever you want to go and give you references for other positions. Fair. More than fair. Clara's voice came out barely above a whisper. Mr. Cole, I don't know how to thank you. Don't thank me yet. You haven't heard my conditions. She waited. First, those children stay safe. That means they listen when I tell them something's dangerous. They don't wander into the far pastures, and they understand that a working ranch is no place for carelessness. They'll listen. I'll make sure of it. Second, you tell me the truth from now on. All of it. No more lies, no more surprises, no more showing up with things you forgot to mention. If there's something I need to know, you tell me before it becomes a problem. I understand. Third. He hesitated, and for the first time, Clara saw uncertainty in his expression. If trouble comes looking for you, if there's someone out there who might try to take those girls away, I need to know about it. Now. Before it shows up on my doorstep. Clara's blood went cold. She'd thought they were safe this far from Texas. Thought the distance had bought them time at least. But Margaret Ashworth had money, had connections, had made it very clear before Clara fled with the children that she intended to claim her nieces one way or another. There's an aunt, Clara said slowly. Their mother's sister. She lives in Boston. She showed no interest in the children while their parents were alive, but after they died, she wanted them. She wanted to separate them, send them to different schools, different homes. She said Ruth was too willful, Nell too sickly, that they'd never make proper society matches as long as they were together. Clara's voice hardened with remembered fury. Their mother asked her to leave. They hadn't spoken since. But after the funeral, Margaret showed up with lawyers. Said she had blood claim. Said I was nothing, just the illegitimate daughter of a man who'd never acknowledged me. But you took the children anyway. I took them in the middle of the night and got on the first train heading west. Clara met his eyes without flinching. I'll not apologize for that. She would have destroyed them. Jackson was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. This aunt. She likely to come looking. I don't know, maybe. She has resources I don't. Then we'll deal with that if it comes. He stood carrying his cup to the basin. For now, you focus on getting those children settled and learning the household routines. I focus on the ranch. We stay out of each other's way as much as possible, and we see if this arrangement can work. Clara stood as well, her heart pounding with relief and terror, and something that might have been hope. Mr. Cole. Jackson. He didn't turn around. If we're going to be living in the same house, might as well use my given name. Jackson. It felt strange on her tongue. Thank you. I know you have no reason to trust me after the way I started things, but I promise you won't regret this. We'll see about that. He finally turned to face her. Now go check on those children. I've got work to do, and you've got a household to learn. He grabbed his coat from the hook and headed for the door. But on the threshold he paused. Miss Weston? Clara, she said, if we're using given names. Clara. The word came out rough, unpracticed. Those girls. Ruth especially. She's got a look about her. Like she's seen too much for someone her size. Clara nodded slowly. She has. She's been carrying her sisters since their parents died. Trying to be the mother they lost. That's too heavy a load for 8 years old. I know. Then maybe... He stopped, seeming surprised at himself for speaking at all. Maybe while you're here you can help her set it down. Let her be a child again, if that's possible. Then he was gone, the door closing behind him, leaving Clara alone in a kitchen that smelled of coffee and possibility. From the bedroom she heard Ruth's voice, low and urgent. "Clara, is everything okay?" Clara walked to the door and opened it to find 4 pairs of eyes fixed on her. Ruth's worried, Grace's hopeful, Lily's guarded, and Nell's still heavy with sleep, but finally blessedly clear of fever. "We're staying," Clara said. "1 month to start. Maybe longer if it works out." Grace let out a small shriek of joy. Lily's grip on her doll loosened slightly. Ruth's face remained carefully neutral, but something in her eyes softened. "Is this our home now?" Nell asked, her voice hoarse and tired. "Like a real home." Clara knelt by the bed, gathering her youngest sister into her arms. "It could be, baby. It really could be. But we have to earn it. All of us. Together." "How?" Clara looked around the room at the wooden walls that had once held a family, at the dust that had gathered in corners during 3 years of solitude, at the window that framed a world of white snow and endless possibility. "By being exactly what we are," she said quietly. "A family that refuses to be broken." Outside, through the window, she could see Jackson Cole walking toward the barn, his shoulders hunched against the cold. He didn't look back, but he hadn't sent them away either. And for now, for this one fragile morning, that was enough. The first week passed in a blur of work and watchfulness. Clara threw herself into the household with a determination that bordered on desperation, scrubbing floors that hadn't been touched in months, reorganizing cupboards that had fallen into bachelor chaos, mending curtains that hung crooked from rusted rods. She rose before dawn and collapsed after dark, driving herself past exhaustion, because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering how fragile this arrangement really was. Ruth watched everything. That was what Ruth did now. She watched and calculated and filed away information like a general preparing for battle. She noted which floorboards creaked, which doors stuck, which windows let in drafts. She memorized Jackson's schedule out before sunrise, back at midday, for a meal he ate in silence, out again until dark. "He doesn't talk much," Grace observed on the 3rd morning, helping Clara knead bread dough at the kitchen table. "Papa used to talk all the time. Remember, he'd tell stories while Mama cooked." "Mr. Cole isn't Papa," Ruth said flatly from her position by the window. "He's our employer. We don't need him to tell stories." "Ruth." Clara's voice carried warning. "We discussed this." "I know. Be helpful. Be quiet. Don't cause trouble." Ruth turned from the window, her young face hard with practiced indifference. "I'm being all those things. I'm just also being honest." "Honest about what?" "About the fact that he doesn't want us here. He's tolerating us because of the storm and because you convinced him. But tolerating isn't the same as wanting." Clara set down the dough, wiping flour from her hands. "Come here." Ruth hesitated, then crossed to stand before her. Clara knelt so they were eye to eye. "You're right," she said quietly. "He doesn't want us here. Not yet. But people can change what they want when they see things differently. Our job right now isn't to make him want us. It's to make him see that we belong." "How do we do that?" "By being exactly who we are. By working hard and caring for each other and showing him that a house with children in it isn't a burden. It's a blessing." Ruth's jaw tightened. "Mama used to say that. About us being blessings." "Your mama was right." "Then why did everyone else treat us like curses, after she died, after Papa?" Ruth's voice cracked, and for just a moment the soldier's mask slipped. "Everyone looked at us like we were problems to be solved. Even before Aunt Margaret came with her lawyers, people were already trying to split us up. Send us to different homes, different cities." Clara pulled Ruth into her arms, feeling the rigid tension in her small body. "I know, sweetheart. I know. But that's not going to happen here. I won't let it. You can't promise that. I can promise I'll fight for it, every single day. That's what I can promise. Ruth pulled back, her eyes wet, but her face composed again. Then I'll fight too. We all will. That's my girl. The bread didn't get finished until noon, but Clara counted it as progress anyway. Nell's recovery was slow, but steady. By the fourth day, she was sitting up in bed demanding stories and attention with the imperious confidence of a 3-year-old who'd been sick long enough to expect coddling. By the sixth day, she was toddling around the main room, investigating corners and asking endless questions about everything she found. What's that? A butter churn. What's that? A spinning wheel. It was Mr. Cole's mother's. What's that? A rifle, and you are not to touch it. Ever. Do you understand? Nell's lower lip trembled. I just wanted to see. You can see with your eyes from right here. Guns are dangerous. They're not for little girls. Are they for big girls? Clara hesitated. Sometimes, when big girls need to protect their families. Can you shoot a gun? I can. Nell's eyes went wide. Really? Did Papa teach you? The question hit like a fist to the chest. Clara had learned to shoot from a stable hand at the Holloway estate, practicing in secret during the years before she was acknowledged even as a servant. Their father had never taught her anything except what it felt like to be invisible. No, baby. Someone else taught me. A friend. Oh. Nell lost interest immediately, her attention captured by a moth fluttering near the window. Can I catch it? Gently. Don't hurt its wings. Jackson came in for his midday meal while Nell was still chasing the moth around the room, her small hands grabbing at empty air. He stopped in the doorway, watching with an expression Clara couldn't read. She's better, he said, not a question. Much better. The fever's completely gone. She's been asking questions all morning. I noticed. He moved to the table where Clara had set out stew and fresh bread. She always this energetic. When she's not sick, yes. She's the liveliest of all of them. Jackson sat pulling the bowl toward him. He ate the way he did everything else efficiently without wasted motion. Clara had noticed that about him. Everything he did served a purpose. No excess, no frivolity. The bread's good, he said after several minutes of silence. Clara looked up from the mending she'd been doing. Thank you. Better than what I've been making for myself. That's not a high bar. I found your attempts in the back of the larder. I think they could be used as building materials. The words were out before she could stop them. Clara froze, horrified at her own boldness. She'd just insulted her employer's cooking, after everything he'd done for them. After Jackson made a sound. It took her a moment to realize he was laughing. It wasn't a loud laugh or a long one, just a short huff of genuine amusement that transformed his face for the briefest moment, making him look younger, less hardened by whatever had carved those lines around his eyes. You're not wrong, he said. My mother would have been ashamed. She could make bread that melted in your mouth. You miss her. The laughter died. Jackson's expression shuddered again, closing off whatever brief warmth had emerged. I miss a lot of things. He stood, leaving half the stew uneaten. I'll be in the north pasture until dark. Don't wait supper. Then he was gone, and Clara was left wondering if she'd just made progress or ruined everything. Ruth appeared in the doorway to the bedroom where she'd been watching the whole exchange. He laughed, she said quietly. I didn't know he could do that. Everyone can laugh, Ruth. Not everyone. Not after they've lost people. Ruth's voice was matter-of-fact, but her eyes held something deeper. Some people forget how. Maybe, but forgetting isn't the same as losing the ability. Sometimes people just need to be reminded. Is that what we're doing? Reminding him? Clara looked at the door Jackson had disappeared through, thinking about the brief flash of humanity she'd glimpsed beneath his careful reserve. I think, she said slowly, that's exactly what we're doing, whether we meant to or not. The second week brought new challenges and unexpected revelations. Lily, who had barely spoken since their arrival, began following Samuel around the property whenever he came to check on the house. Samuel was the ranch foreman, a weathered man in his 50s who'd worked for the Cole family for 2 decades. He moved slowly, spoke rarely, and seemed utterly unperturbed by the silent shadow that trailed his every step. "She's taken a shine to you," Clara observed one morning, watching Lily hand Samuel a cup of water she'd carried from the kitchen. Samuel accepted it gravely, drinking with the seriousness the gesture deserved. "She reminds me of my daughter. Same quiet way about her. Same way of watching." "You have a daughter." "Had. Fever took her and her mother both winter of '68. Samuel's voice held no self-pity, only the flat acceptance of someone who'd made peace with grief long ago. "She'd be about Ruth's age now, if she'd lived." Clara's heart clenched. "I'm sorry. Long time ago." Samuel handed the empty cup back to Lily, who clutched it like a prize. "Little ones like this, they feel things deep. Don't always have words for it. Sometimes they just need someone to be quiet with." "Is that what you do? Be quiet with her? Seems to be what she needs." Samuel straightened his old bones creaking. "Mr. Cole, he's the same way. Been quiet so long he's forgotten there's any other way to be. But quiet don't mean empty. Just means the words are stuck somewhere they can't get out." He tipped his hat and moved off toward the barn, Lily trailing behind him, until Clara called her back for lunch. That night, for the first time since their mother died, Lily spoke more than 2 words at dinner. "Samuel showed me where the horses sleep," she said, her voice rusty with disuse. "There's a brown one named Biscuit. She let me touch her nose." Ruth and Grace exchanged shocked glances. Clara kept her expression carefully neutral. "That sounds lovely, sweetheart. Did you like the horses?" "They're big." Lily considered this. "But nice big, not scary big. Maybe Mr. Cole will let you visit them again sometime. Samuel said I could help brush Biscuit tomorrow, if it's okay." Lily's dark eyes found Clara's uncertain but hopeful. "Is it okay?" "We'll ask Mr. Cole. If he agrees, yes." Jackson had been listening from his seat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable as always. When Clara glanced at him, he gave a short nod. "Fine by me. Samuel knows what he's doing. He'll keep her safe." Lily's face transformed. It wasn't quite a smile Clara suspected real smiles were still too far away for this wounded child, but it was something. A crack in the wall she'd built around herself. "Thank you," Lily whispered. Then so quietly Clara almost missed it. "Thank you, Mr. Jackson." Something flickered in Jackson's eyes. He cleared his throat roughly and returned to his meal without responding. But Clara noticed his hands weren't quite steady as he lifted his fork. Progress. Slow, fragile, easily shattered, but progress nonetheless. The letter arrived on the 12th day. Clara was hanging laundry on the line behind the house when she heard hoofbeats approaching. She looked up to see a rider she didn't recognize, a young man in town clothes, clearly not one of the ranch hands. "Mrs. Cole," he called out. Clara's blood went cold. She wasn't Mrs. Cole. She wasn't Mrs. Anything. "I'm Miss Weston. Can I help you? Got a letter for Jackson Cole. Came in on the morning stage from Cheyenne." The rider handed down an envelope, its paper too fine, its handwriting too elegant. Sender paid extra for fast delivery. Must be important. Clara took the envelope with numb fingers. The return address was a law office in Boston. Ashworth, Pemberton and Associates. "Thank you," she managed. "I'll see that Mr. Cole receives it." The rider tipped his hat and rode off, leaving Clara standing in the cold with a letter that might destroy everything. She didn't open it. That would be wrong, a violation of trust she couldn't afford. But she knew with the certainty of prey sensing predator exactly who had sent it. Margaret had found them. Jackson returned at midday to find Clara waiting on the porch, her face pale and set. "What's wrong?" She held out the letter without speaking. Jackson took it, turning it over to examine the return address. His expression didn't change, but his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "This the aunt you mentioned? Her lawyers. I recognize the firm name." "You want to be here when I open it?" Clara shook her head. "I need to check on the children. Ruth's been watching me since the letter arrived. She knows something's wrong." "How?" "She always knows." Clara's voice cracked. "She's 8 years old, and she always knows." Jackson studied her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder. The touch was brief, barely a brush of his fingers against her worn cotton dress, but Clara felt it like a brand. "Go tend the children. I'll read this and find you after. If it's bad, then we'll deal with it together. Go." Clara went. She found Ruth in the bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed with her hands folded in her lap, her posture rigid with waiting. "It's Aunt Margaret, isn't it?" There was no point in lying. "A letter from her lawyers. Jackson's reading it now." "She found us." "Possibly. We don't know what the letter says yet." "It says she's coming for us." "That's what it says." Ruth's voice was flat, eerily calm. "She said she would. At the funeral. She said she'd find us no matter where we went. She said blood calls to blood." "Ruth." "She said I was willful, and Grace was plain, and Lily was simple, and Nell was too sickly to survive. She said we'd never amount to anything together, that we needed to be separated and trained properly. She said—" Ruth's composure cracked, and suddenly she was crying the first real tears Clara had seen from her since the night their parents died. "She said I was just like Papa, that I had his stubbornness. She made it sound like a curse." Clara gathered Ruth into her arms, holding her while she sobbed. Over Ruth's shaking shoulders, she saw Grace appear in the doorway, her face tight with worry. Behind Grace, Lily clutched her doll with white-knuckled intensity. "What's happening?" Grace asked. "Why is Ruth crying? Ruth never cries." "It's going to be all right," Clara said, though she had no idea if that was true. "Everything's going to be all right." "Is the mean lady coming?" Lily's voice was barely a whisper. "The one who said we were problems?" "I don't know yet, sweetheart." "I don't want to go with her." Lily's grip on her doll tightened. "She said Rosie was dirty. She wanted to throw Rosie away." "No one's throwing Rosie away. No one's going anywhere." "Promise?" Clara looked at her sisters. Ruth's tear-stained face, Grace's frightened eyes, Lily's fierce grip on her only remaining treasure, Nell's oblivious humming from the corner where she was playing with blocks Samuel had carved for her. "I promise," she said, knowing she might not be able to keep it. "I promise I'll fight for us, all of us, no matter what that letter says." The door to the main room opened. Heavy footsteps crossed the floor. Then Jackson's voice, rough and strained. "Clara, we need to talk." Ruth's arms tightened around Clara's neck. "Don't go. Don't leave us." "I'm not leaving. I'm just going to talk to Mr. Cole." Clara gently extracted herself from Ruth's grip. "Stay here with your sisters. I'll be right back." She found Jackson standing by the fireplace, the letter crumpled in his fist. His face was hard, but his eyes held something that looked almost like anger. "What does it say?" "Your aunt is claiming the children are being held illegally. She's filed papers with a judge in Boston saying you kidnapped them. She's demanding their immediate return to her custody as their closest blood relative." Clara's legs went weak. She grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. "That's not I didn't kidnap them. I saved them." "I know that." "Their mother asked me to take them. She begged me. Her last words were about keeping them together, keeping them safe." "Clara!" Jackson's voice cut through her rising panic. "I know. I believe you." She stopped staring at him. "You do. I've seen how you are with those children. I've seen how they look at you. Whatever the law says, they're yours. Anybody with eyes can see that." "Then what do we do if Margaret has filed papers?" "We get our own lawyer. We build a case. We show whatever judge hears this that you're the one who's been caring for them, not some woman in Boston who never showed interest until it became convenient. You'd do that? Help us fight this? Jackson's expression shifted, something raw and unguarded flickering beneath his careful control. Those children have been in my house for 2 weeks. In that time, Nell's gotten well. Lily's started talking, and Ruth's stopped looking at every door like she's planning her escape. That's not nothing. That's not something I'm willing to let some stranger from back east destroy because she thinks blood entitles her to people she never bothered to care about. Clara's eyes filled with tears she couldn't control. I don't know how to thank you. Don't thank me yet. This is going to be a fight. Your aunt has money and lawyers and legal standing. We have a ranch in Wyoming and a judge who may or may not care about what's actually right. But we have a chance. Jackson met her eyes directly. We have a chance. That's all I can promise. But I've won longer odds before. When? The war. We were outnumbered every single battle. Still made it home. Clara wiped at her tears, drawing herself up straighter. What do we do first? First, we don't tell the children anything until we know more. No point scaring them with possibilities. Ruth already knows. She figured it out the moment the letter arrived. Jackson's jaw tightened. That girl sees too much. She's had to. Seeing everything is how she's kept them safe. Then we tell Ruth the truth. All of it. She's earned that. But the little ones, Grace, Lily, Nell, they need to stay children a while longer. They need to believe they're safe here. Are they safe here? Jackson was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with something Clara couldn't name. As safe as I can make them, for whatever that's worth. Clara nodded slowly. Then we tell Ruth tonight, after the others are asleep. Together. We tell her together. Why? Jackson's eyes held hers, and in their gray depths, Clara saw something shift. Something that had been locked away was slowly opening. Because she needs to see that she's got more than one person fighting for her family. She needs to know she's not alone in this anymore. Jackson. He stopped, seemingly frustrated with his own inability to articulate what he was feeling. Just know that whatever happens next, you're not facing it alone. None of you are. That's all I'm trying to say. Clara reached out and took his hand the first time she'd initiated any kind of touch between them. His fingers were rough, calloused from years of hard work. They closed around hers with surprising gentleness. Thank you, she said quietly. For everything. For believing me. Wasn't hard to believe. His voice was gruff. Truth's got a sound to it. Lies sound different. You've always sounded like truth. He pulled his hand away, clearing his throat roughly. I need to send a telegram to town. There's a lawyer there, Henry Walker. He's not fancy, but he's sharp and he's honest. I'll ride out this afternoon. What should I tell Ruth? Tell her we're fighting back. Tell her this isn't over. Tell her... He paused at the door, looking back at Clara with an expression she couldn't quite read. Tell her she's got a whole ranch on her side now. That stubborn runs both ways. Then he was gone, his boots heavy on the porch steps, and Clara was left standing in the empty room with hope and terror battling for control of her heart. She took a deep breath, then another. Then she walked back into the bedroom where 4 pairs of eyes were waiting for her, and she began the work of holding her family together with nothing but determination and borrowed time. Henry Walker arrived at the ranch 3 days after Jackson's telegram, a lean man with sharp eyes and ink-stained fingers who looked more like a schoolteacher than a lawyer. He spent 4 hours interviewing Clara, taking notes in a leather-bound book, asking questions that dug into wounds she'd spent months trying to forget. Tell me again about the night you left. Clara's hands twisted in her lap. Margaret had come to the house that afternoon. She'd brought custody papers, she said. She told me I had no legal standing, that the children belonged with blood family. What did you say? I told her their mother had chosen me, that I'd promised to keep them together. And her response... Clara's jaw tightened. She laughed. Said the promises of dying women meant nothing in court. Said she'd have the children separated by week's end. Ruth to a boarding school in Vermont. Grace to a finishing school in Philadelphia. Lily to a special institution for slow children, and Nell to an orphanage until she was old enough to work. Lily isn't slow. I know that. Margaret didn't care. She just wanted them manageable, separate, broken into pieces she could control. Henry wrote something in his book. So you ran. I took them that night, packed what we could carry, and caught the first train west. I didn't know where we were going. I just knew we had to get far enough away that she couldn't reach us. But she did reach you. She has money. Money finds people. Clara's voice hardened. I thought Wyoming might be far enough. I was wrong. Henry closed his book, studying Clara with an expression she couldn't read. You understand what you're facing. Mrs. Ashworth has filed kidnapping charges. She's claiming you took those children by force and transported them across state lines. That's a federal matter. I didn't kidnap them. I saved them. The law doesn't always see those as different things, Miss Weston. Then what do we do? Henry glanced at Jackson, who'd been standing silently by the fireplace throughout the interview. We build a case for why those children belong with you. Character witnesses. Evidence of the mother's wishes. Documentation of Mrs. Ashworth's neglect before the parent's death. It won't be easy, but it's not impossible. And if we lose? The silence stretched too long. Clara felt her heart hammering against her ribs. If we lose, Henry said finally, you could face prison, and those children will be sent wherever Mrs. Ashworth decides to send them. Ruth's voice came from the doorway. Then we won't lose. Clara spun around. Ruth stood with her arms crossed, her face set in that hard expression that made her look decades older than 8. Ruth, you shouldn't be listening. I should be listening. This is about us, about our family. Ruth walked into the room, positioning herself beside Clara with deliberate purpose. Mr. Walker, what do you need from us? What can we do to help win? Henry studied the girl for a long moment. How old are you? 8, almost 9. And you understand what's happening here, what's at stake. I understand that a woman who never wanted us is trying to tear us apart, and the only person who's ever really loved us might go to prison for keeping us safe. Ruth's voice didn't waver. I understand perfectly. Henry turned to Jackson. This one's going to be a hell of a witness. Jackson's mouth twitched. She's been a hell of a fighter since she got here. Good. She's going to need to be. Henry tucked his book into his coat. I'll start preparing the case. The hearing's been scheduled for 3 weeks from now in Cheyenne. That's not much time, but it's something. 3 weeks, Clara breathed. That's all we have. Mrs. Ashworth pushed for expedited proceedings, claimed the children were in danger, and needed immediate removal. Danger. Jackson's voice went cold. From what? From living on a remote ranch with a man of questionable reputation and a woman who lied her way into employment. Henry's expression was grim. Her lawyers are good. They're painting you as kidnappers, both of you, saying Jackson's complicit in harboring fugitive children. Clara felt the blood drain from her face. He didn't know. When I arrived, he didn't know anything about the children or Margaret or any of it. He's innocent. He knows now. He's been helping you hide them for weeks. That makes him involved whether he knew at the start or not. Then I'll leave. Clara's voice cracked. I'll take the girls and go somewhere else. I won't let him be destroyed because of my choices. You're not going anywhere. Jackson's voice cut through the room like a blade. He'd moved from the fireplace, was standing close enough now that Clara could see the fire in his gray eyes. Jackson, you don't understand. I understand fine. You're thinking about running again because you think it'll protect me. It won't. If you leave now, it looks like guilt. It looks like you're proving everything Margaret's lawyers are saying about you. But if I stay, you could lose everything. Your ranch, your reputation, your freedom. Then I lose it. Jackson's jaw was set. his voice rough with something that sounded almost like anger. "You think I care more about this ranch than about what's right. You think I'd let 4 little girls get destroyed to protect my own interests. You barely know us. You have no obligation." "I know enough." He stepped closer, and Clara forgot how to breathe. "I know Ruth would die for her sisters. I know Grace tries so hard to make everyone happy that she forgets herself. I know Lily's finally starting to talk again after months of silence. I know Nell calls me Mr. Jackson, like it's the most natural thing in the world, and I know—" He stopped, struggling with words that didn't come easy. "I know this house hasn't felt alive in years. Not since the war, not since I lost everyone I ever cared about. And then you showed up with those 4 girls and your lies and your desperation, and suddenly there's noise again. Laughter. Life. Jackson, I'm not letting that go. Not for Margaret Ashworth. Not for any lawyer in Boston. Not for anything." His voice dropped rough and raw. "So you're staying. We're fighting this together, and that's the end of it." Ruth made a small sound. Clara turned to find her sister crying, really crying, tears streaming down her face in a way Clara hadn't seen since the night their parents died. "Ruth, sweetheart." "He means it." Ruth's voice was thick with tears. "He actually means it. Nobody's ever fought for us before. Not like that." Clara pulled Ruth into her arms, holding her while she sobbed. Over Ruth's shoulder she met Jackson's eyes. "Thank you," she mouthed silently. He nodded once, then turned away, but not before Clara saw something vulnerable flash across his face. Something that looked almost like hope. The weeks that followed were a hurricane of preparation and fear. Henry Walker came to the ranch almost daily, drilling Clara on her testimony, coaching Ruth on how to present herself to the judge, gathering statements from everyone who'd witnessed Clara's care of the children. Samuel wrote a letter in his careful, cramped handwriting, describing how Lily had come alive under Clara's attention, how Nell's recovery had been nothing short of miraculous, how the household had transformed from a place of silence into something that felt like home. Sheriff Dalton stopped by to offer his support, promising to testify about Clara's character and the obvious bond between her and the children. Even Mrs. Porter from the neighboring dairy ranch made the trip over, armed with fresh milk and fierce opinions about women who tried to tear families apart. "I've seen those children," she said, her voice ringing through the kitchen. "I've seen how they look at Miss Weston. That's not fear. That's not coercion. That's love, pure and simple. Any judge with eyes in his head will see it too." But it was Grace who delivered the testimony that changed everything. 6 days before the hearing, Henry was reviewing documents at the kitchen table when Grace appeared in the doorway, her small face pale but determined. "Mr. Walker, I need to tell you something." Henry looked up. "What is it, sweetheart?" "About Aunt Margaret. About what she said to Mama before she died." Clara froze. "Grace, you don't have to—" "Yes, I do." Grace's voice was steady in a way Clara had never heard from her. "I heard them. The day before Mama died, when Aunt Margaret came to visit. I was hiding in the closet because I didn't want to see her. She scared me." "What did you hear?" Grace's hands twisted together, but she didn't look away. "Aunt Margaret told Mama she was going to take us away. All of us. She said Mama was too sick to stop her, and Papa was too weak. She said she'd split us up and make sure we never saw each other again." The room went silent. Even Ruth, who'd been pretending to read in the corner, had gone still. "What did your mother say?" Henry asked quietly. "She cried. She begged Aunt Margaret to leave us together. She said we needed each other, that we were all we had." Grace's voice cracked. "And Aunt Margaret laughed. She said needing each other was exactly the problem. She said we were too dependent, too attached. She said she'd break us apart and make us strong. And then Mama made her leave. She got out of bed. She was so sick she could barely stand, but she got up and she pushed Aunt Margaret out the door. And then she called for Clara." Clara's eyes were burning. She remembered that day. remembered Elizabeth Holloway, pale as death, gripping her hand with surprising strength. "Promise me," Elizabeth had whispered. "Promise me you'll keep them together, no matter what. Promise me you won't let her win." Clara had promised, and she'd kept that promise even when it cost her everything. "That's why Mama asked you to take us." Grace continued looking at Clara, with eyes too wise for 6 years old. She knew Aunt Margaret would come. She knew nobody else would fight. She chose you because you were the only one who would. Henry closed his notebook slowly. "Grace, would you be willing to say this in front of a judge?" "Yes." "It might be scary. There will be lawyers asking you questions. Mrs. Ashworth will be there." Grace's chin lifted in an expression that reminded Clara painfully of Ruth. "I'm not scared of Aunt Margaret. She's the one who should be scared." "Why's that?" "Because we have Clara and Mr. Jackson, and we're not alone anymore." Grace's voice rang with quiet certainty. "Mama always said that family isn't just blood. It's the people who choose to love you. Aunt Margaret never chose us. Clara did." Henry looked at Jackson, then at Clara, then back at Grace. "Well," he said finally, "I think we might actually have a chance." Margaret Ashworth arrived in Clearwater 3 days before the hearing, accompanied by 2 lawyers in expensive suits and a man Clara didn't recognize, tall, cold-eyed, with a calculating expression that made her skin crawl. They took rooms at the town's only hotel, and within hours, rumors were flying through Clearwater like wildfire. "She's been talking to everyone," Sheriff Dalton reported, stopping by the ranch that evening. "Telling anyone who'll listen that you're dangerous, Clara. That you seduced Jackson into helping you kidnap 4 innocent children. That you're using them for some kind of scheme." "What kind of scheme?" Jackson demanded. "She says you're after his money, that you showed up with those children specifically to trap him into marriage and get your hands on the ranch." Clara felt sick. "That's absurd. I didn't even know Jackson existed until I answered his advertisement." "I know that. Most folks in town know that. But Margaret's convincing, and she's got money. She's been buying drinks and making friends and spreading her version of events to anyone who will sit still long enough to listen." "Can we do anything about it?" "Not legally. She's not breaking any laws by talking to people. All we can do is make sure our side of the story is just as loud." Sheriff Dalton's weathered face was grim. "You should know that man with her. His name's Edward Cole." Jackson went absolutely still. "What?" "Edward Cole. Says he's your cousin." "He is." Jackson's voice had gone flat and dangerous. "I haven't seen him in 10 years. Not since he tried to steal my water rights after my mother died." "Well, he's here now. And from what I can tell, he's mighty interested in your property. Been asking around about surveys and deeds and mineral claims." Clara looked at Jackson, seeing the pieces click together in his mind. "She's not just after the children." "No." Jackson's jaw was tight. "Edward's wanted this land for years. He's been trying to find ways to take it from me ever since I came back from the war. Margaret must have contacted him, offered him something in exchange for his help." "What could she offer?" "Legitimacy. A family connection to the custody case. If Edward testifies that I'm unfit, that I've been harboring criminals on my property, it gives her lawyers ammunition." "Would he do that? Turn against his own family?" Jackson laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Edward would sell his own mother if the price was right. Blood means nothing to him, never has." The door to the bedroom opened. Ruth emerged, her face pale but composed. "I heard everything," she said before anyone could ask. The mean lady brought reinforcements. "Ruth, don't tell me not to worry. Don't tell me it'll be okay." Ruth's voice was fierce. "Tell me what we're going to do about it." Jackson looked at her, really looked, seeing the warrior she'd become out of necessity. "We're going to fight smarter," he said. "Edward showing up isn't just a threat, it's also a tell. It means Margaret knows her case isn't as strong as she pretends. She's calling in favors, stacking the deck because she's worried she might actually lose. How does that help us?" Because desperate people make mistakes, and when they do, we'll be ready. Ruth nodded slowly. What do you need me to do? Tomorrow, you're going to tell me everything you remember about your Aunt Margaret. Every visit, every conversation, every time she made your mother cry. We're going to build a picture of who she really is, and we're going to make sure the judge sees it. That's a lot of bad memories. I know. Can you handle it? Ruth's chin lifted. I can handle anything if it keeps my sisters safe. Jackson met Clara's eyes across the room. In that moment, something unspoken passed between them, an acknowledgement that this wasn't just a legal battle anymore. It was war, and they were fighting it together. The night before the hearing, Clara couldn't sleep. She lay in the darkness of the bedroom she shared with the girls, listening to their breathing, memorizing the sounds, in case this was the last night she'd hear them. Grace murmured in her sleep something about butterflies. Lily clutched Rosie against her chest, her small fingers tangled in the doll's worn hair. Nell was sprawled across half the bed, taking up more space than seemed possible for such a tiny person. And Ruth was awake too, her eyes glinting in the darkness. You should sleep, Clara whispered. So should you. I can't. Me either. Ruth was quiet for a moment. Clara. What happens if we lose? Clara had asked herself that question 1,000 times. She still didn't have an answer. I don't know, sweetheart. Will we ever see each other again if they separate us? I'll find a way. No matter what happens tomorrow, no matter what the judge decides, I will find a way to get back to you, all of you. Promise? I promise. Ruth was silent again. Then so quietly Clara almost missed it. I love you. I don't think I've ever said that before. Not to you. But I do. You're my sister, and you're my mother, and you're everything. Clara's eyes burned. I love you too, Ruth. All of you. More than I ever knew I could love anything. Then we'll be okay. Ruth's voice was steady with a certainty she couldn't possibly feel. Whatever happens tomorrow, we'll be okay. Because we have each other. And nobody can take that away. Not really. Clara wanted to believe her. God, she wanted to believe her. But as the first gray light of dawn crept through the window and the day of judgment arrived, all she could feel was the weight of everything she stood to lose, and the desperate, fragile hope that somehow, love would be enough. The courthouse in Cheyenne was larger than Clara had expected, a stone building that loomed over the main street like a monument to authority. She climbed the steps with Ruth's hand in hers, Grace holding Lily's hand behind them, and Nell riding on Jackson's hip because she'd refused to walk and refused to let Clara carry her. Mr. Jackson carries me. She'd insisted, her small arms wrapped around his neck. He's strong. Jackson hadn't argued. He'd just lifted her up and settled her against his chest like it was the most natural thing in the world. Henry Walker met them at the door, his face grave. They're already inside. Margaret, Edward, both lawyers. The judge is Harold Peterson. He's fair, but he's also old-fashioned. He believes in blood family. We'll have to work hard to convince him otherwise. We're ready, Clara said, though she wasn't sure that was true. One more thing. Henry's voice dropped. Edward filed additional papers this morning. He's claiming Jackson's been harboring criminals and should have his property rights reviewed. It's a separate case, but he's asking the judge to consider it as evidence of Jackson's poor character. Jackson's expression went cold. He's trying to take my land through the back door. Yes, and if he succeeds in making you look unfit, it hurts our custody case too. Can he do that? He's doing it. Whether it works is up to the judge. Henry straightened his coat. Let's go. It's time. The courtroom was packed. Clara recognized Sheriff Dalton, Mrs. Porter Samuel, and half a dozen other faces from Clearwater, who'd made the journey to show their support. But on the other side of the aisle sat Margaret Ashworth, elegant in black silk, flanked by her lawyers, and Edward Cole. Margaret's eyes found Clara immediately. She smiled a cold, triumphant smile that said she'd already won. Clara lifted her chin and walked forward. The hearing lasted 4 hours. Margaret's lawyers spoke first, painting Clara as a manipulative fortune hunter who'd stolen innocent children and fled across state lines to avoid justice. They produced documents showing Clara's illegitimate birth, her years in charity homes, her lack of any legal claim to the Holloway children. "This woman," the lead lawyer declared, "has no right to these children, no blood relation, no legal standing, no financial resources. She took them in the middle of the night and ran like a thief, because that's exactly what she is." Then Edward took the stand, testifying that Jackson Cole was a violent man with a troubled history, that he'd returned from the war damaged and dangerous, that he had no business involving himself in custody matters. "My cousin has always been unstable," Edward said smoothly. "The fact that he's harboring this woman and her stolen children only proves what I've said for years. He's not fit to run that ranch. He's not fit to be trusted with anyone's welfare." Clara watched Jackson's face as Edward testified, watched the muscle ticking in his jaw, the white-knuckled grip of his hands on his knees. He said nothing, but his eyes burned with barely contained fury. Then it was their turn. Henry called Clara to the stand first. She told her story from the beginning. Elizabeth Holloway's illness, her deathbed promise, Margaret's threats, the desperate flight west. She spoke clearly, calmly, even when Margaret's lawyers tried to rattle her with accusatory questions. "You lied to Mr. Cole about the children, didn't you?" "Yes." "You deceived him to gain access to his home." "I did what I had to do to protect my family." "They're not your family, Miss Weston. They're strangers you've appointed yourself guardian of without any legal right." "Blood doesn't make family," Clara said, her voice ringing through the courtroom. "Love does. Choice does. I chose those children. I chose to fight for them when no one else would. I chose to give up everything I had to keep them safe and together. If that doesn't make them my family, then I don't know what family means." Then Ruth took the stand. She walked up with her head high, her small hands steady, her eyes clear and focused. She answered every question with precision, never wavering, never looking away. "Do you want to live with Miss Weston?" Henry asked. "Yes." "Why?" Ruth turned to look directly at Margaret. "Because she's the only one who ever loved us. Our aunt doesn't want us, she wants to own us, to control us, to break us apart so we're easier to manage. Clara wants us to be happy, to be together, to be a family." "And Mr. Cole? What do you think of living in his home?" Ruth's expression softened slightly. "He's grumpy, and he doesn't talk much, and he acts like he doesn't care about anything. But he carried Nell when she was sick. He taught Lily to brush horses. He lets me ask questions about the ranch even when I'm annoying. He fought for us when he didn't have to." "Objection," Margaret's lawyer called out. "The witness is a child. Her opinions are not relevant to legal custody determinations." Judge Peterson looked at Ruth over the rim of his spectacles. "I'll decide what's relevant in my courtroom. Continue, young lady." Ruth turned back to face the judge directly. "Sir, I know I'm just a kid. I know the law says blood family matters more than anything else. But my blood family is trying to destroy us. They want to send me to Vermont and Grace to Philadelphia, and Lily to some institution, and Nell to an orphanage. They want to make sure we never see each other again." Her voice cracked, but she pushed through. "Clara's the one who kept us together. Clara's the one who held us when we cried for our parents. Clara's the one who gave up everything so we could stay a family. If you take us away from her, you're not saving us. You're finishing what Aunt Margaret started." The courtroom was silent. Grace testified next, telling her story about overhearing Margaret's threats to their dying mother. Then Sheriff Dalton describing Clara's character. Then Mrs. Porter. Then Samuel. Finally, Jackson took the stand. He spoke about finding Clara on his doorstep with 4 children he hadn't expected. About the lie she'd told and why she'd told it. About watching Nell recover from fever. Lily find her voice. Ruth learned to trust. Grace start to smile again. "I've been alone a long time," he said, his voice rough. "I thought that was what I wanted. Turns out I was wrong. Those children, they brought something back to my life that I'd given up hoping for. And the woman who saved them, who protected them, who fought for them against everything." He paused, his eyes finding Clara's across the room. "She's the bravest person I've ever met. The law might say she has no right to those children. The law's wrong." Judge Peterson listened to everything. He asked questions, took notes, studied the documents laid before him. And when all the testimony was done, he announced that he would deliver his ruling in the morning. One more night of waiting. One more night of not knowing. Clara gathered the girls and left the courtroom, Jackson walking beside her, and prayed that when tomorrow came, the judge would see what she saw. That family wasn't about blood. It was about choice. And she had chosen these children with everything she had. The night before the verdict stretched into eternity. Clara sat by the window of their hotel room, watching the empty street below, while the girls slept in the bed behind her. She hadn't slept, couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Margaret's triumphant smile, Edward's cold testimony, the judge's unreadable face. A soft knock at the door made her heart jump. She crossed the room, quickly opening it to find Jackson standing in the hallway, still dressed, his face haggard with exhaustion. "Couldn't sleep either," he said quietly. "No. Walk with me." Clara glanced back at the sleeping children. Ruth stirred, one eye opening. "Go," Ruth whispered. "I'll watch them." Clara hesitated, then nodded. She stepped into the hallway, pulling the door closed behind her. They walked down the stairs and out into the cold night air, their breath forming clouds in the darkness. Neither spoke for several minutes. The town was silent around them, everyone asleep except two people too afraid to close their eyes. "What if we lose?" Clara finally asked. The question she'd been choking on for weeks. Jackson stopped walking. "Then we appeal. We fight. We find another way. And if there isn't another way, there's always another way. You don't know that." "No." His voice was rough. "I don't. But I know that giving up isn't an option. Not for me. Not anymore." Clara turned to face him. In the dim light, his features were shadowed, unreadable, but she could feel the tension radiating from him, the same desperate hope she was clinging to herself. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Really? You could have walked away a dozen times. You could have protected yourself, your ranch, your reputation. Why didn't you?" Jackson was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he reached out and took her hand. His fingers were cold, rough with calluses, but his grip was gentle. "Because I spent 10 years building walls," he said quietly. "After the war, after losing everyone I cared about, I convinced myself that being alone was safer. That if I didn't let anyone in, I couldn't be hurt again. And then we showed up. And then you showed up." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "With your lies and your desperation and those 4 little girls who looked at me like I might be just another person about to send them away. And something in me—" He stopped, struggling with words. "Something in me recognized them. Recognized you. Recognized the fight in all of you." "What do you mean?" "I mean I've been where you are. Broken. Alone. Convinced that nobody would ever choose to stay. And then you appeared on my doorstep, and you were so damn determined to protect those children that you lied your way into my home, risked everything on a stranger's kindness." His grip on her hand tightened. "Nobody's ever fought that hard for anything I cared about. Nobody except my mother, and she's been dead 10 years. Watching you with those girls, seeing how much you love them, how much you'd sacrifice, it reminded me what it feels like to believe in something." Clara's eyes burned. "Jackson." "I'm not good with words. Never have been. But I need you to understand something." He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, despite the cold night air. "Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever that judge decides, you're not alone anymore. Those children have a home as long as I have land to give them. And you—" He stopped, his jaw working. "I have what?" Clara whispered. "You have me." The words came out rough, almost painful. "If you want me, for whatever that's worth." Clara stood frozen, her heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. This wasn't part of any plan, wasn't part of any strategy. This was just two broken people standing in the dark, reaching for each other. "I want you," she said quietly. "God help me, I want you. But I'm not free. If Margaret wins tomorrow—" "She won't. But if she does? Then we'll run. Take the children and disappear somewhere she'll never find us. You'd give up everything, your ranch, your home, your life here." Jackson's eyes met hers, steady and certain. "I'd give up a hell of a lot more than that for you, Clara Weston. I thought you'd figured that out by now." She kissed him. She didn't decide to do it, didn't think about consequences, or timing, or propriety. She just rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his, and he caught her like he'd been waiting for exactly this moment. The kiss was brief, fierce, full of everything neither of them had the words to say. When they broke apart, Clara was trembling, and Jackson's breathing had gone ragged. "Whatever happens tomorrow," she said, "I need you to know these past weeks have been the closest thing to home I've ever felt. You gave us that. You gave me that." "Clara, let me finish. I came here with nothing but lies and desperation. You could have thrown us out a dozen times. Instead, you fought for us. You became family to children who'd forgotten what family meant. Whatever happens tomorrow, I will never forget that. Never." Jackson pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her with fierce protectiveness. "Nothing's going to happen tomorrow except us winning," he said against her hair. "I refuse to accept any other outcome." They stood like that for a long moment, holding on to each other in the darkness, drawing strength from the contact. Then Clara pulled back with a shaky laugh. "We should try to sleep. Tomorrow's going to be hell. I was going to say challenging." Same thing. But Jackson was almost smiling. "Go on, get back to the girls. I'll see you in the morning." She was halfway to the hotel door when his voice stopped her. "Clara." She turned. "I love you." The words hung in the cold air between them, simple and devastating. "I know it's bad timing," he continued. "I know we've got bigger things to worry about. But in case tomorrow goes wrong, in case everything falls apart, I needed you to know. I love you. I think I've loved you since you stood in my kitchen with fire in your eyes and told me you'd die before you let anyone separate those girls." Clara walked back to him. She took his face in her hands and kissed him again, slow and tender this time. "I love you too," she said. "Now stop being fatalistic. We're going to win." "Yes, ma'am." She went back inside, climbed the stairs, and slipped into the hotel room where her sisters slept. Ruth's eyes opened immediately. "Everything okay?" "Everything's fine. Go back to sleep." "Clara." "Yes." "You were smiling when you came in. I haven't seen you smile like that in months." Clara touched her lips, feeling the ghost of Jackson's kiss. "I have something to smile about. Now sleep. Tomorrow's important." "I know." Ruth's voice was soft in the darkness. "Clara, whatever happens, thank you. For everything." "You don't need to thank me." "Yes, I do. You gave up everything for us. Your whole life. Most people wouldn't do that. You're my family, Ruth. There's nothing I wouldn't do for my family." Ruth was quiet for a moment. Then, "Mr. Jackson loves you, doesn't he?" Clara's breath caught. "What makes you say that?" "The way he looks at you. Like you're the answer to a question he's been asking his whole life." Ruth paused. "Do you love him back?" "I think I do, yes." "Good." Ruth's voice held satisfaction. "Then we really are a family now. All of us." Clara lay down beside her sisters, her heart full of terror and hope in equal measure. Tomorrow would decide everything. Tomorrow would either destroy them or save them. But tonight, for just a few precious hours, she let herself believe in happy endings. Morning came too quickly, and not quickly enough. Clara dressed the girls with shaking hands, braiding hair, straightening dresses, trying to project a confidence she didn't feel. "Remember," she told them as they prepared to leave the hotel, "no matter what happens in that courtroom, I love you, all of you. That doesn't change based on what a judge decides." "We know," Grace said solemnly. "And we love you too," Lily added, her hand clutching Rosie tight. Nell just reached up to be held, and Clara scooped her up, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Jackson met them in the hotel lobby. He looked like he hadn't slept at all, but his eyes were clear and determined. "Ready?" "No," Clara admitted. "But let's go anyway." The courthouse was already crowded when they arrived. Word had spread about the case, and half of Clearwater seemed to have made the journey to witness the outcome. Clara saw friendly faces, Sheriff Dalton, Mrs. Porter Samuel, and unfriendly ones. Margaret sat in the front row with Edward and her lawyers, her expression serene and confident. She caught Clara's eye and smiled. Clara looked away, focusing on getting the children settled. Ruth sat straight-backed and silent. Grace held Lily's hand. Nell squirmed in Clara's lap, too young to understand why everyone was so tense. Judge Peterson entered, and the room fell silent. "I've spent the night reviewing testimony and evidence," he began, his voice carrying through the packed courtroom. "This case presents a difficult question, one without an easy answer." Clara's heart was pounding so hard she could barely hear him. "On one hand, we have Mrs. Margaret Ashworth, blood relation to these children with significant resources and social standing. On the other, we have Miss Clara Weston, who admits she has no legal claim to these children, no financial resources, and who deceived her way into her current position through deliberate lies." Margaret's smile widened. "However," the judge's voice sharpened, "legal claim and financial resources are not the only factors this court must consider. The welfare of the children is paramount. And in that regard, the testimony I've heard paints a troubling picture." Margaret's smile faltered. Grace Holloway testified that she overheard Mrs. Ashworth threatening to separate the children and send them to different institutions. Ruth Holloway confirmed this account and provided additional details about her aunt's stated intentions. I find their testimony credible. Clara felt Ruth's hand find hers and squeeze. Furthermore, multiple witnesses from Clearwater have testified to Miss Weston's devoted care of these children. I have statements from a sheriff, a ranch foreman, a neighboring landowner, and others, all describing a woman who has sacrificed everything, her comfort, her security, her very freedom, to keep these children safe and together. Judge Peterson paused, his eyes moving from Margaret to Clara. "Mrs. Ashworth, you claim these children are being held illegally. Yet you showed no interest in their welfare until 6 months after their parents' death. You made no attempt to contact them, provide support, or offer comfort during what must have been an extraordinarily difficult time." "Your Honor," Margaret's lawyer began. "I'm not finished." The judge's voice was steel. "You claim blood relation gives you rights, but rights come with responsibilities. Where were you when these children needed you? Where were you when they were grieving? Where were you when they had nowhere to turn?" He turned to address the courtroom. "The law values blood relation. I value it too, but I value actions more. And the actions I've seen from Miss Weston, the risks she's taken, the sacrifices she's made, the love she's demonstrated, speak louder than any legal document or blood test ever could." Clara stopped breathing. As for Mr. Edward Cole's claims regarding Jackson Cole's property and character, the judge's expression hardened. "I find them to be transparently self-serving and wholly without merit. Mr. Jackson Cole served his country with honor and has run his ranch without incident for years. The suggestion that he is somehow unfit because he chose to help a woman in need is absurd. I am dismissing those claims entirely." Edward's face went red with fury. Therefore, Judge Peterson continued, it is the ruling of this court that custody of Ruth Grace Lilly and Nell Holloway is hereby granted to Miss Clara Weston with full parental rights and responsibilities. The courtroom erupted. Clara couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The words echoed in her ears, but her brain refused to process them. We won. Ruth's voice was barely audible over the chaos. Clara, did we win? Then it hit her. Really hit her. And Clara burst into tears, pulling Ruth into her arms, reaching for Grace and Lily, trying to hold all of them at once while Nell shrieked with confusion and excitement. We won, she sobbed. We won. You're mine. Really, truly mine. Jackson was there somehow. His arms around all of them, his face transformed by a smile Clara had never seen before. Told you, he said roughly. Told you we'd win. Margaret Ashworth's voice cut through the celebration like a knife. This isn't over. Clara looked up to find her aunt on her feet. Her elegant composure finally cracked, her face twisted with fury. I will appeal. I will take this to every court in the territory. You will do nothing. The voice came from the back of the courtroom. Everyone turned. A woman stood in the doorway. She was perhaps 60, silver-haired, dressed in plain but quality clothing. Clara didn't recognize her, but Margaret clearly did. Her face went white. Aunt Frances, she breathed. Margaret. The older woman walked forward, her gaze sweeping the courtroom with sharp assessment. I've traveled a very long way to witness this spectacle. I wish I could say I was surprised by your behavior, but I'm not. You've always been vindictive. How did you know about this? I received a letter from a Mr. Henry Walker explaining the situation and asking if I had any relevant information about your relationship with your sister and her children. Frances's voice was cold. I had quite a lot of relevant information as it happens. She turned to address the judge. Your Honor, my name is Frances Ashworth. I am Margaret's aunt and the eldest living member of the Ashworth family. I can confirm that Margaret showed no interest whatsoever in her sister's children while their parents were alive. She visited once, criticized everything she saw, and was asked to leave after making threats about the children's future. That's not true, Margaret started. It is true, and you know it. Frances's voice cracked like a whip. Your sister wrote to me after that visit, devastated. She begged me to intervene if anything ever happened to her and her husband. She was afraid of you, Margaret. Afraid of what you might do to her children. The courtroom had gone absolutely silent. I should have acted sooner. I should have come forward when I heard about the custody dispute. Instead, I waited, hoping you might show some humanity, some genuine concern for those children's welfare. I was a fool to hope. She turned to Clara. Miss Weston, I owe you an apology. I am Margaret's aunt, which means I am also related to your father, though the connection is distant. I knew about you. I knew Thomas Holloway had a daughter he refused to acknowledge. I should have intervened years ago. I didn't. Clara stared at her, speechless. But I can intervene now, and I am prepared to testify under oath that Margaret's only interest in these children is control and spite, not love or genuine concern. I am also prepared to provide financial support for their upbringing should you require it. Why? Clara managed to ask. Why would you do that? Because my niece made a dying request that her children stay together and safe. Because the woman she entrusted them to has honored that request against impossible odds. And because blood may connect us, Miss Weston, but it's our choices that define us. You chose to love those children. Margaret chose to destroy them. The court has made its ruling, but I wanted you to know that not everyone in this family shares Margaret's cruelty. Margaret was shaking with rage. You have no right. I have every right. I am the matriarch of this family, and I am ashamed of you. Your sister would be ashamed of you. And if you attempt to appeal this ruling, or interfere with these children's lives in any way, I will personally ensure that every social connection you have in Boston knows exactly what kind of woman you are. She looked at Judge Peterson. Your Honor, I apologize for the interruption. I simply wanted to ensure that my testimony was on record should Margaret attempt any further legal action. The judge nodded slowly. Your testimony is noted, Mrs. Ashworth. And while I appreciate your support of this court's ruling, I should tell you that it was made based on evidence and testimony, not family politics. Of course. Frances inclined her head. I expected nothing less. She turned back to Clara, her expression softening slightly. Take care of them, Miss Weston. Love them. Give them the family my niece always wanted them to have. I will, Clara whispered. I promise. Frances nodded once, then swept out of the courtroom without another glance at Margaret. The silence she left behind was deafening. Then Ruth's voice, small but clear. Can we go home now? Clara looked at her sisters. Ruth, with her old soul eyes, Grace, with her hopeful smile, Lily clutching Rosie, Nell squirming to be put down. She looked at Jackson, standing solid and steady beside her, his hand on her shoulder. Yes, sweetheart, she said, her voice breaking. We can go home. They left the courthouse as a family. Margaret's furious protests faded behind them as they stepped into the weak winter sunlight. Sheriff Dalton was grinning. Mrs. Porter was crying. Samuel tipped his hat with quiet satisfaction. Hell of a thing, Jackson said as they walked toward the waiting wagon. Hell of a fight. We won, Clara said, still not quite believing it. We actually won. Was there ever any doubt? Yes, constantly. Jackson laughed a real laugh, full and warm, the sound of a man who'd remembered joy. Well, the doubting's over now. Let's go home. He helped the girls into the wagon, lifting Nell up last and settling her between her sisters. Then he turned to Clara, his expression growing serious. Earlier, he said quietly, what I said about... I remember what you said. I meant it, every word. Clara reached up and touched his face, feeling the rough stubble beneath her palm. I know you did. I meant what I said too. So what happens now? Now we go home. We raise 4 girls. We build a life. She smiled through tears she couldn't stop. And maybe eventually we make it official. Official how? Mr. Cole, are you asking me to propose to you? Jackson's face flushed. I'm asking what you want. What you really want without any legal battles or desperate circumstances forcing your hand. Clara stepped closer, rising on her toes to press her lips to his. I want you, she said against his mouth. I want this family we've made. I want to wake up every morning in that ranch house with those children and spend the rest of my life proving I deserve the second chance you gave us. You don't have to prove anything. Maybe not to you, but to myself. She pulled back, meeting his eyes. I've spent my whole life being told I wasn't enough. Not legitimate enough, not wealthy enough, not worthy enough. You made me believe different. Those girls made me believe different. I want to spend the rest of my life being worthy of that belief. Jackson pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe. You're already worthy, he said roughly. You've always been worthy. You just needed someone to see it. I needed you. Well? His voice was thick with emotion. You've got me. For as long as you'll have me. Is forever too long? Forever sounds about right. From the wagon, Ruth's voice called out with exasperated affection. Are you two going to stand there all day? Or can we please go home? Nell needs a nap, and I need to not be in this town anymore. Clara laughed, pulling away from Jackson with reluctance. We're coming. She climbed up onto the wagon seat, Jackson taking his place beside her. Behind them, 4 girls settled into the bed, Grace already trying to keep Lily from bouncing. Ruth, keeping watch with eyes that finally held something other than fear. Jackson picked up the reins. Ready! Clara looked back at her sisters, then at the man beside her, then at the road stretching ahead toward home. Ready, she said. The wagon lurched forward, leaving Cheyenne behind. Leaving fear behind. Leaving the old life behind. They rode in silence for the first hour, everyone lost in their own thoughts. Then Nell's voice piped up from the back. "Mr. Jackson." "Yes, Nell." "Are you going to marry Clara?" Clara felt her face flush. Jackson cleared his throat. "Would that be okay with you?" "Only if you promise to carry me sometimes. Clara's arms get tired." "I think I can manage that." "And you have to let me name a horse." "Which horse?" "Any horse I want." Jackson glanced at Clara, his eyes dancing with suppressed laughter. "We'll negotiate." "What's negotiate?" "It means we'll talk about it." Nell considered this. "Okay, then yes, you can marry Clara." "Well," Jackson said solemnly, "I'm glad I have your permission." Grace leaned forward. "Does this mean we get to call you Papa?" The question hung in the air. Clara felt Jackson go still beside her. "Only if you want to," he said finally, his voice rough. "I won't ever try to replace your real father. But if you want another one, someone else to love you, protect you, help you grow up right, then yeah. You can call me Papa." "I want to," Lily said quietly, the first time she'd spoken since leaving the courthouse. "I want a Papa again." "Me too," Grace agreed. Ruth was silent. Clara watched her, seeing the conflict on her young face, the desire warring with the fear of losing something, of replacing something sacred. "Ruth," Jackson's voice was gentle, "you don't have to decide anything right now." "I know," Ruth's voice was thick. "It's just Papa is Papa. He was ours first, before everything went wrong. He was, and he always will be. Nothing changes that. But he's gone." "Yes." "And you're here." "Yes." Ruth was quiet for a long moment, then so softly Clara almost missed it. "Maybe I could call you Pa. That's different from Papa. That's just ours." Jackson's hands tightened on the reins. "Pa works just fine." "Okay." Ruth settled back. "Okay, Pa." Clara reached over and took Jackson's hand, lacing her fingers through his. He squeezed back hard. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them needed to. The ranch appeared on the horizon as the sun began its descent, familiar and welcoming in a way that made Clara's heart ache. Home. They'd fought so hard for it, lost so much, risked everything, and now, finally, it was truly theirs. Jackson pulled the wagon into the yard. Samuel emerged from the barn, his weathered face splitting into a rare smile when he saw them. "Good news, I take it." "The best." Jackson helped Clara down from the wagon, then turned to lift the girls out one by one. "We won, Samuel. They're staying. All of them." "Well." Samuel's voice was gruff, but his eyes were suspiciously bright. "About time this place had some life in it again." He lifted Nell into his arms when she reached for him, carrying her toward the house while the other girls followed. Jackson and Clara stood alone in the yard, watching their family disappear through the front door. "It's real," Clara said quietly. "It's actually real. Feels like a dream. A good one." Jackson turned to her, his face soft in the fading light. "The best one I've had in 10 years. He kissed her, then slow and sweet, a promise sealed in the winter air. When they broke apart, Clara was smiling through fresh tears. "Take me home, Jackson Cole." "You are home, Clara Weston." And together, they walked through the door of the ranch house into the warmth and noise and chaos of the family they'd built from broken pieces and desperate hope. The first morning back at the ranch, Clara woke to the sound of Nell singing. It wasn't a real song, just nonsense syllables strung together in a 3-year-old's version of melody, but it was the most beautiful sound Clara had ever heard. She lay still for a moment, listening. From somewhere in the house came the clatter of pots, Ruth probably already trying to help with breakfast. Grace's voice murmured something she couldn't make out. Lily's quieter response followed. Home. They were home. Really, truly home. Clara rose and dressed quickly, finding her way to the kitchen where chaos had already erupted. Ruth stood on a stool at the stove, attempting to scramble eggs. Grace was setting the table with mismatched plates. Lily sat in the corner with Rosie carefully arranging wildflowers she must have gathered from somewhere. Though where she'd found flowers in December, Clara couldn't imagine. And Jackson. Jackson stood at the counter, Nell perched on his hip, watching the mayhem with an expression of bewildered amusement. "You're up," he said when he saw Clara. "I was going to bring you breakfast in bed. With Ruth's eggs." "Hey," Ruth protested. "My eggs are fine." Clara peered into the pan. The eggs were not fine. They were gray and rubbery and stuck to the bottom in clumps. "They're perfect, sweetheart. But maybe let me help next time." "I wanted to do something nice." Ruth's voice was small. "You've done everything for us. I wanted to do something back." Clara's heart clenched. She crossed to Ruth and pulled her into a hug, eggs forgotten. "You being here is enough. You being safe and happy and home, that's all I need." "But I want to help. I want to be useful." "You are useful. You've been holding this family together since before I took over. But Ruth..." Clara pulled back to look her sister in the eye. "You're allowed to be a child now. You're allowed to let someone else carry the weight for a while." Ruth's lip trembled. "I don't know how." "Then we'll learn together. All of us." Clara smoothed Ruth's hair back from her face. "Now, let me show you the trick with eggs. Lower heat, more butter, constant stirring." Jackson set Nell down and moved to pour coffee, staying out of the way, as Clara took over the cooking lesson. Within minutes, new eggs were sizzling properly, and Ruth was beaming with accomplishment. "I did it." "You did. See, you're a quick learner." Breakfast was loud and chaotic, and nothing like the silent meals Jackson had eaten alone for years. Nell spilled her milk. Grace knocked over the salt shaker. Lily fed pieces of biscuit to Rosie under the table, apparently convinced the doll was hungry, and Jackson watched all of it with an expression Clara had never seen on his face before. "What?" she asked quietly, catching his eye. "Nothing. Just..." He shook his head. "I forgot what this was like. Having people to eat with. Noise to fill the silence. Do you mind it? The noise?" "I thought I would." His voice was rough. "Turns out I was wrong about a lot of things." After breakfast, the girls scattered Ruth to help Samuel with the horses, Grace to explore the garden she'd been promised in spring, Lily to follow Jackson around the property with her doll. Clara found herself alone for the first time in what felt like years. She stood in the kitchen doorway, looking at the house that had become her home. It was rougher than what she'd grown up around, simpler than the Holloway estate. But every corner held warmth now. Every room had been touched by the family they'd built. "You're crying." She hadn't heard Jackson return. She wiped her eyes quickly, embarrassed. Happy tears. Still tears. He moved closer, his hand finding the small of her back. "You okay?" "I'm better than okay. She laughed, shaking her head. "I don't have words for what I am. Relieved doesn't cover it. Happy isn't big enough. I keep waiting to wake up and discover this was all a dream." "It's not a dream." "I know. But my whole life, good things didn't last. Every time I thought I'd found somewhere safe, something came along and destroyed it. I'm terrified that it'll happen again." Clara nodded, unable to speak. Jackson turned her to face him, his hands on her shoulders. "Listen to me. I spent 10 years being afraid. Afraid of loss. Afraid of caring. Afraid of letting anyone get close enough to hurt me. You know what that got me?" "What?" "A whole lot of empty. A house that felt like a tomb. A life that wasn't really living." His grip tightened. "Then you showed up. You and those 4 girls with your lies and your desperation and your fierce, stubborn love. And you reminded me that being afraid of loss isn't the same as being safe from it. It's just being alone." "Jackson." "I'm not going anywhere. Those children aren't going anywhere. Whatever comes next, good or bad, we face it together. That's what family means. That's what this is. Clara pulled him close, burying her face against his chest. I love you, she whispered. I love you too. His voice was rough. Now stop crying and help me figure out what to do with a 5-year-old who's convinced her doll needs its own horse. Clara laughed through her tears. Lily asked for a horse for Rosie. She made a very persuasive argument, something about Rosie being lonely when Lily's inside. And what did you say? I said I'd think about it. Jackson's expression was pained. Clara, how do I say no to that face? She looked at me with those big eyes, and You're going to be a terrible disciplinarian. I'm absolutely going to be a terrible disciplinarian. It's a good thing I'm here then. Jackson kissed her forehead. It's a good thing you're here for a lot of reasons. The days settled into a rhythm. Clara learned the household routines Jackson had let slide during his years alone. Ruth threw herself into helping with the horses, her natural talent earning Samuel's quiet approval. Grace took over the kitchen garden, drawing elaborate diagrams of what they'd plant come spring. Lily continued her silent companionship with Samuel, slowly blossoming under his patient attention. And Nell became Jackson's shadow. Papa, look. I see sweetheart. Pa, watch me. I'm watching. Pa, I want up. Jackson lifted her without hesitation, settling her on his hip, like he'd been doing it his whole life. She's got you wrapped around her finger, Clara observed one evening, watching Jackson carry Nell around the property for the 3rd time that day. I have no idea what you're talking about. She asked for 3 biscuits at dinner. You gave her 4. She was hungry. She fed 2 of them to the chickens. Jackson's face flushed. I'm working on it. Clara laughed, the sound free and easy, in a way it hadn't been in years. Don't work too hard. I like watching you be wrapped around her finger. 2 weeks after their return from Cheyenne, a letter arrived. Clara recognized the handwriting immediately. Her blood went cold. What is it? Ruth asked, seeing her face change. Letter from Boston. Clara's voice was steady, but her hands weren't. From Francis Ashworth. Jackson appeared in the doorway. The aunt who testified. Yes. Open it. Clara broke the seal with trembling fingers. She read in silence, her expression shifting from fear to surprise to something she couldn't name. Well, Ruth demanded. What does it say? Clara had to stop and start again. She's set up a trust. For the girls. For their education, their futures. She says it's what their mother would have wanted. The room went silent. How much? Jackson asked quietly. Enough. More than enough. Enough for all 4 of them to have choices I never had. Schools if they want. Land if they want. Freedom. Why would she do that? Ruth's voice was suspicious. She's Margaret's aunt. She's family to the people who tried to destroy us. She's also family to you. Clara set the letter down carefully. She says she's spent years watching Margaret become something cold and cruel. She says she should have intervened sooner, done more to help your mother, done more to stop your aunt. This is her penance. Do we have to take it? Clara looked at Ruth, seeing the girl's rigid pride, her fear of owing anything to anyone connected to Margaret. No, we don't have to take it. But Ruth, this money could change your lives. All your lives. It could give you opportunities I could never provide on my own. We don't need opportunities. We need family. You have family. This doesn't change that. Ruth was silent for a long moment. Then, what do you think we should do? Clara glanced at Jackson, who gave a small nod. I think we should accept it. Put it in trust for all of you. Use it for education, for land, for whatever you need when you're grown. Not because we owe Francis anything, but because your mother would have wanted you to have choices. Mama wanted us to stay together. You are together. This doesn't change that. Promise? I promise. Clara took Ruth's hand. Money doesn't make family. Choices do. We chose each other. Nothing in any bank account can change that. Ruth nodded slowly. Okay, if you think it's right. I think it's complicated, but I think your mother would be glad to know someone in her family finally did something good for you. The letter sat on the table between them, a reminder that even in victory, the past kept reaching forward. But this time, it reached with an open hand instead of a closed fist. Spring arrived slowly, the snow melting into mud, the mud drying into soil ready for planting. Grace threw herself into the garden with fierce determination, dragging her sisters outside to help dig and plant and water. "It'll be beautiful," she declared, surveying the rows of seeds she'd buried with Ruth's grudging assistance. "Just wait. Come summer we'll have tomatoes and beans and squash and everything." "Will we have flowers?" Lily asked, Rosie tucked under her arm as always. "We'll have so many flowers, Rosie won't know which ones to smell first." Lily smiled a real smile, the kind Clara had almost given up hoping to see. "Grace?" "Yeah. Thank you for including Rosie." Grace knelt down to her sister's level. "Rosie's family too, Lily. We include family." Clara watched from the porch, her heart full to bursting. These moments, small, ordinary, easily overlooked, were the ones she'd fought for. The ones she'd lied and run and risked everything to protect. "You're staring." Jackson had appeared beside her, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. "I'm memorizing." "Memorizing what?" "This, them, in case." She stopped herself. "In case it all goes away. Old habits." Jackson handed her a cup, his shoulder brushing hers as he settled against the porch railing. "It's not going away, Clara." "I know, logically. But the fear? The fear takes time. I still wake up some nights expecting the house to be empty, expecting everyone to be gone." His voice was quiet. "It gets better. Slowly, but it gets better." When did it start getting better for you?" "The morning Nell called me Pa for the first time. Something broke open in my chest, something I'd kept locked away since the war." He paused. "You did that. You and those girls. You broke something I'd been protecting for 10 years, and you know what I found underneath." "What?" "I wasn't protecting anything. There was nothing left to protect. I'd been guarding an empty vault because I was too scared to see there was nothing inside it anymore. You filled it back up." Clara set down her coffee and took his hand. "I want to marry you." Jackson went still. "That's so? I've been waiting for you to ask properly, but you're too stubborn or too scared or too something, so I'm asking instead." "Clara, I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other a few months, but I've spent my whole life being careful, being practical, waiting for the right moment. There is no right moment, Jackson. There's just this moment. And in this moment, I want to be your wife, officially, permanently, in front of God and these children and whoever else wants to watch." Jackson's hand tightened on hers. "You're proposing to me." "Someone had to. I was working up to it." "You were taking too long." A smile broke across his face, the full, unguarded smile she'd only seen a handful of times. "Yes." "Yes what?" "Yes, I'll marry you, Clara Weston, since you asked so nicely." Clara laughed and kissed him, not caring that 4 little girls were now watching from the garden with various expressions of delight and disgust. "Finally," Ruth called out. "I thought you'd never get around to it." "Were we that obvious?" Clara asked, pulling back from Jackson. "You were embarrassingly obvious," Grace confirmed. "Even Lily noticed." Lily nodded solemnly. "Rosie noticed too." "Well," Jackson cleared his throat, his face red but his eyes dancing. "Since everyone already knew, I guess we should make it official." "When? How about Sunday preacher comes through town Sunday? We could do it then." Clara stared at him. "This Sunday, that's 4 days away." "You got a reason to wait longer." "No, but..." "Then Sunday it is." He kissed her forehead. I've waited 10 years for this house to feel like home again. I'm not waiting one more day than I have to. The wedding was small and simple and perfect. Clara wore a white dress Mrs. Porter had somehow produced from her own closet decades old, but beautifully preserved. The girls wore their best dresses, wildflowers woven into their hair by Grace's careful fingers. Jackson wore a suit that had clearly been his father's, a little too big in the shoulders but pressed and proper. The whole town seemed to have turned out Sheriff Dalton and his wife Samuel, standing stiff and proud in his Sunday clothes, Mrs. Porter dabbing at her eyes, half a dozen other families who'd heard the story and wanted to witness the ending. The preacher was a young man, earnest and sincere, who stumbled over Jackson's name twice before getting it right. Do you, Jackson Thomas Cole, take this woman? I do. Jackson didn't wait for the full question. The preacher blinked. I wasn't finished. Don't need to be. The answer's the same no matter how you phrase it. Laughter rippled through the small crowd. Clara felt her face flush with happiness. And do you, Clara Mae Weston, take this man? I do. The preacher sighed, but he was smiling. I don't suppose you want to wait for the ring part either. We've got our own version. Jackson turned to Ruth, who stepped forward with solemn importance. She held out 2 rings, simple gold bands, nothing fancy but gleaming with newness. These were your grandmother's? Jackson said quietly to Clara. Samuel kept them safe after she passed. He gave them to me last night. Said if I was going to make an honest woman of you, I should do it right. Clara's eyes filled with tears. Jackson. The preacher's waiting. She laughed, the sound wet and broken, and utterly happy. Jackson slid the ring onto her finger, his hands steady despite the emotion in his eyes. Clara did the same for him, her hands trembling but sure. By the power vested in me, the preacher said finally, able to complete a sentence, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Jackson kissed her before the preacher could suggest it. The girls cheered. Mrs. Porter burst into open sobs. Samuel cleared his throat several times in quick succession, and Clara held on to her husband, and let the last of her fear dissolve into pure, uncomplicated joy. The celebration afterward was loud and messy and wonderful. Mrs. Porter had brought enough food to feed an army. Sheriff Dalton produced a fiddle and played jigs that had even Ruth dancing. Samuel lifted Nell onto his shoulders so she could see over the crowd of adults. Grace and Lily had fallen asleep in a corner, curled together like puppies. Ruth was helping Mrs. Porter pack up leftover food. Her serious face relaxed in a way Clara had never seen. Happy. Jackson had found her on the porch where she'd retreated for a moment of quiet. Beyond happy. Beyond anything I knew how to feel. He settled beside her, their shoulders touching. You know what I keep thinking about. What? That day you showed up, Storm coming in 4 children in tow lying through your teeth about being single. He shook his head. I should have sent you away. Every logical part of me said to send you away. Why didn't you? Because you looked at me like I was your last hope. And something in me remembered what that felt like, being that desperate, that afraid, that determined to survive, no matter the cost. He paused. I couldn't turn my back on that, even when I wanted to. And now I can't imagine what my life would look like without you, without them. He nodded toward the house where the sounds of the children could still be heard. You didn't just give me a family, Clara. You gave me back myself. You did the same for me. Then I guess we're even. I guess we are. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the sounds of celebration winding down, watching the stars emerge one by one above the Wyoming plains. Clara. Thank you. For what? For lying your way into my life, for fighting for those girls, for refusing to give up when anyone sensible would have walked away. His voice was rough with emotion. For choosing us. All of us. Clara leaned into him, her head on his shoulder, her heart so full it ached. There was never any other choice, Jackson. From the moment I stepped off that stagecoach, from the moment I saw your face and knew you'd never let anyone hurt them, there was never any other choice. You were always home. I just didn't know it yet. And now I know." The door opened behind them. 4 pairs of feet approached Ruth's determined stride. Grace's lighter steps, Lily's careful shuffle, Nell's pattering run. "Is the party over?" Grace asked, yawning. "Almost. Time for bed soon." "Can we stay up a little longer? Please." Clara looked at Jackson, who shrugged helplessly. 4 little girls looking at him with pleading eyes. He never stood a chance. 5 more minutes. The girls cheered, crowding onto the porch steps around them. Nell climbed into Jackson's lap. Lily settled against Clara's side. Rosie clutched tight. Grace leaned against Ruth, who had positioned herself so she could see everyone at once, still watching, still protecting, but without the desperate edge that had defined her for so long. "Look at the stars," Grace breathed. "There's so many." "In Boston you couldn't see them like this," Ruth said. "Too many lights." "Well, we're not in Boston." Jackson's voice was warm. "We're home." "Home," Lily repeated softly. "I like that word." "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." They sat together on the porch of the ranch house that had been silent for so long, watching the stars wheel overhead, listening to the wind whisper across the prairie. 5 children who'd lost everything and found each other. 2 adults who'd been running from their pasts and finally stopped. A family built not from blood but from choice, from desperation and determination, from lies that became truth and strangers who became everything. Clara looked at the faces around her. Ruth's guarded hope, Grace's open joy, Lily's quiet contentment, Nell's sleepy peace, Jackson's steady love, and felt something settle in her chest, something permanent, something unshakable. "Clara," Ruth's voice was soft. "Yes, sweetheart. Are we going to be okay? Really okay?" Clara pulled her close, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "We're already okay, Ruth. We've been okay since the moment we chose each other. Everything else is just details." "Yay." Ruth nodded slowly. Finally believing it. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of spring and new beginnings. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. Somewhere closer, the horses shifted in the barn, settling in for the night. And on the porch of Cole Ranch, a family held on to each other and let the fear go. Not because it would never return, not because life wouldn't bring new challenges and new heartbreaks, but because they'd learned something that changed everything. That love wasn't the absence of fear. It was the choice to stay anyway. Jackson's arm tightened around Clara. Nell's breathing had evened into sleep. The other girls were fading fast, leaning into each other with the unconscious trust of children who knew they were safe. "Time for bed," Clara said quietly. 5 more minutes," Grace mumbled. "You said that 20 minutes ago." 5 more. Jackson laughed softly and rose, scooping Nell up with practiced ease. "Come on, ladies. Morning comes early on a ranch." Ruth stood first, helping Lily to her feet. Grace followed, grumbling but obedient. They filed into the house one by one, a parade of sleepy children and heavy hearts lightened by love. Clara remained on the porch for one more moment, looking out at the land that had become hers, at the life that had become hers, at the family that had become hers. She'd come here with nothing but desperation and 4 children she'd sworn to protect. She'd found home. Jackson appeared in the doorway behind her. "You coming?" Clara smiled, a real smile, free of shadows, free of fear. "Yes," she said. "I'm coming home." She walked through the door of the ranch house into the warmth and chaos and love waiting inside. Behind her, the Wyoming wind carried one truth across the endless prairie, that family was never about blood or circumstance or the hand life dealt you. It was about the choice to love fiercely, fight bravely, and hold on to each other through every storm. And the Coles, all 7 of them, bound not by birth, but by something stronger, had made that choice. Together. Forever. Home.